Prologue. Isla Vaughn had exactly 4 seconds to ruin her life. 4 seconds between stepping backward to capture the perfect wide shot of the Phoenix Lights main stage, lasers cutting through desert night like liquid neon, bass so deep it rattled her ribcage, and the moment her heel caught on a thick black speaker cable snaking across the VIP platform. 4 seconds of freefall, her strawberry margarita launching from her hand in a perfect arc, the pink liquid catching strobe lights as it spun through smoky air. 4 seconds to watch that drink collide with the broad chest of a man who looked like he'd been carved from shadow and violence. And in the heartbeat after impact, tequila and strawberry puree soaking through an expensive black shirt that probably cost more than her camera. Isla looked up into eyes that glowed molten gold and knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 1. The festival pulsed around them like a living thing. 30,000 people lost in the music, bodies moving as one massive organism under the vast Arizona sky. The air tasted like dust and sweat, and that electric anticipation that only comes when strangers become a crowd, when individual heartbeats sink to a single drop. Isla had been riding that high all night. Her best friends, Zara and Kit, were somewhere in the crush near the rails, screaming lyrics they'd memorized on road trips. Isla had peeled away to the elevated media platform, chasing angles, hunting for those raw, unguarded moments when people forgot cameras existed. Dancing couples. A girl crying happy tears. An old man with his grandkids on his shoulders, all of them beaming at the lights. She lived for this. The chaos. The beauty. The proof that humans could still create magic. But standing there, dripping margarita onto scuffed Converse, staring up at 6'4" of barely restrained fury, Isla felt the festival shrink to a pinpoint. Just her. Just him. Just the catastrophic mess she'd made. The man didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there like a statue while pink liquid dripped from his collar, tracing the hard lines of a jaw that could cut glass. He was devastating. That was the only word that fit. Not handsome in some catalog-perfect way, but devastating in the way storms are devastating, beautiful and terrifying and utterly inescapable. Sharp cheekbones. Dark hair that fell just past his collar, slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. A mouth set in a hard line that somehow still looked obscenely kissable. And those eyes. God, those eyes. They'd flashed gold when the drink hit. Actually glowed for a split second, catching the stage lights in a way that didn't make sense, before settling into a shade of amber so intense Isla felt it in her stomach. He wore power like cologne. Every line of his body radiated control, from his broad shoulders to the way he held himself perfectly still despite being drenched in alcohol and fruit chunks. Designer clothes that fit him like they'd been tailored on his body. A watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her annual rent. This was a man who owned things. Buildings. Companies. Maybe cities. And Isla had just baptized him in bottom-shelf tequila at a music festival. Her brain finally caught up with the disaster. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The words tumbled out in a rush as Isla lunged forward, grabbing a handful of thin festival napkins from her camera bag. She reached for his chest, trying to dab at the spreading stain, hands shaking. I tripped. I didn't see the cable. I swear I'm not usually this much of a walking disaster. Her fingers made contact with his shirt, soaked fabric over what felt like solid stone, and the world lurched. Heat. Instant and overwhelming, racing up her arm like she'd grabbed a live wire. Her breath caught. Static electricity, maybe. Had to be. Except it didn't fade. It intensified, spreading through her chest, coiling low in her belly, making her skin feel too tight and her pulse kick into overdrive. The man went rigid under her touch. She heard him inhale sharply, his chest expanding, and when his hand snapped up to catch her wrist, his grip was iron. Isla froze. His fingers circled her wrist completely, thumb pressing against her racing pulse. Not painful. Not bruising, but absolutely unmovable. He pulled her closer. Just an inch, but it felt like falling. and bent his head until his mouth was level with her ear. His breath stirred her hair. He smelled like cedar and night air, and something wild she couldn't name, something that made her hindbrain scream run and stay in the same frantic heartbeat. When he spoke, his voice was gravel and smoke, pitched so low only she could hear it over the pounding bass. "You're going to pay for that, little wolf." The words vibrated through her. She felt them in her bones. Isla's mouth went dry. I'm not a wolf. I'm just clumsy." He pulled back just enough to look at her, and his eyes, those impossible amber eyes, flashed brighter. Definitely brighter. Not a trick of the lights. Not her imagination. His gaze dragged over her face like a physical touch, lingering on her parted lips, the pulse hammering in her throat, the way her chest rose and fell too fast. "Not yet," he murmured. And then he released her. Isla stumbled back, wrist tingling where he'd held her, every nerve ending lit up like Christmas. She opened her mouth, to apologize again, to ask what the hell he meant, to demand why her entire body felt like it was vibrating, but he was already turning away. Moving with fluid, predatory grace, he cut through the crowd like it didn't exist. People parted for him instinctively, some primal part of them recognizing danger, even if they didn't understand why. Within seconds he'd vanished into the VIP section behind velvet ropes and bored security guards, swallowed by darkness and bass. Leaving Isla standing there, shaking, confused, and inexplicably aching for him to come back. What the hell was that? Isla pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart slam against her ribs. The festival roared back to life around her. The music, the lights, the press of bodies. But it all felt distant. Muted, like she was underwater. Her wrist still burned where he'd touched her. She rubbed it absently, trying to make sense of what just happened. Little wolf. He'd called her little wolf. And his eyes had glowed. Actually, genuinely glowed. Not just reflected light but produced it, like there was something luminous living behind them. Maybe she'd had too much to drink. Maybe the altitude. Phoenix was high desert over 1,000 feet, was messing with her head. Maybe she'd inhaled someone's vape cloud and was having a weird reaction. Except none of those explanations made her skin stop tingling. None of them explained the electricity that had arced between them, or the way her body had responded to him like he was magnetic north and she was a compass with no choice but to point his direction. Or the way his voice, rough and commanding and absolutely certain, had said, "Not yet," like he knew something about her future that she didn't. Isla shook herself, grabbed her camera, forced her legs to work. She needed to find Zara and Kit. Needed to laugh this off over overpriced festival fries and pretend her hands weren't still shaking. Just a weird encounter. A hot, intense, deeply unsettling encounter with a man who looked at her like she was prey and salvation in the same glance. Nothing to worry about. She almost believed it. What Isla didn't know, couldn't know, was that 50 yards away, behind tinted glass in the VIP skybox, Cade Thorne was gripping a steel railing hard enough to dent it. His wolf was howling. Not metaphorically. Actually howling inside his head, clawing at his control, demanding he go back, find her, claim her, mark her so thoroughly that every creature within 100 miles would know she belonged to him. Mate, mate, mate. The word pounded through his skull in time with his racing heart. 15 years. 15 years he'd been alpha of the Sonoran pack. 15 years of ruthless control, of building an empire both human and supernatural, of never once losing his grip on the beast inside. And one clumsy human with cinnamon-scented hair and a smart mouth had just shattered that control in 4 seconds flat. He could still feel the phantom press of her fingers against his chest. Still smell her. Wildflowers and something sweet, something uniquely her that made his mouth water and his canines ache to extend. The mate bond had snapped into place so violently he'd nearly shifted right there in front of thousands of humans, nearly let his wolf tear free and drag her away to somewhere dark and private where he could. Cade exhaled hard, forced his hands to unclench. The railing bore deep finger-shaped impressions in the metal. This was impossible. Mates were rare, sacred, once-in-a-century bonds. And they happened between wolves. Not between an alpha and a human who had no idea supernatural creatures walked among her, who'd looked at him with confusion and fear and something else, something heated that his wolf had wanted to devour. Behind him, Sonoran cleared his throat. His second-in-command stood in the shadows, arms crossed, expression carefully neutral. Problem, Alpha? Cade's jaw clenched. Find out everything about her.
Name.
Address. Where she works. Who she knows. I want a full report by dawn. That's the photographer. Isla Vaughn. Freelance. Lives in downtown Phoenix. Specializes in music festivals and... I don't care what she specializes in. Cade's voice came out too rough, edged with growl. He reined it in. Just get me the file. Sonoran studied him for a long moment. Then, quietly, you can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking? She's human. I'm aware. The pack laws. I know the laws. Cade turned, and his eyes flashed full gold. Alpha dominance rolled off him in waves.
Get me
the file. Sonoran bowed his head in submission and left without another word. Cade turned back to the window, scanning the crowd until he found her. There, moving through the press of bodies, camera bouncing against her hip, rejoining two friends who hugged her and laughed at something she said.
She looked so alive.
So bright and fearless and completely, devastatingly unaware of the target she'd just painted on herself. Because in the supernatural world, an alpha's mate was sacred. Protected. But also, leverage. Every rival pack, every enemy he'd made climbing to power, would see her as a weakness to exploit the second they caught her scent on him. The smart thing, the alpha thing, would be to walk away. Let the bond fade. Protect her by staying the hell away. Cade's reflection stared back at him from the glass, eyes still glowing, jaw tight with barely leashed hunger. He'd never been good at doing the smart thing. Isla sat curled on her apartment couch 3 weeks later, phone clutched in white-knuckled hands, and tried to make sense of her life. That night at Phoenix Lights should have been a blip. An embarrassing story she'd tell over drinks. Remember when I dumped a margarita on that gorgeous scary dude, and he said the weirdest thing? Except it wasn't a blip. Because 3 hours after the festival, at 2 a.m, there'd been a knock on her hotel door. And when she'd opened it, half asleep, hair a mess, still in her festival clothes, Cade Thorne had been standing there. Rain-soaked despite the desert never seeing rain. Eyes glowing that impossible amber. Water dripping from his dark hair, his expensive clothes, like he'd walked through a storm that didn't exist. He'd looked at her with such raw intensity that her knees had gone weak. And he'd said 6 words that changed everything. You're mine, and I'm not leaving. Chapter 2. Here's the thing about werewolf alphas that nobody tells you, and Isla learned this the hard way, in the most terrifying, thrilling, absolutely unhinged week of her life. They don't date. They don't do coffee meetups or awkward first kisses, or those cute getting-to-know-you conversations where you pretend to like their taste in music.
No.
They claim. They hunt. They obsess. And Cade Thorne decided Isla was the second her strawberry margarita hit his chest. Isla woke up in her hotel room the morning after Phoenix Lights with a pounding headache, glitter embedded in places glitter should never be, and 47 missed calls from an unknown number. 47. She stared at her phone screen, pulse kicking up for reasons she didn't want to examine. The calls had started at 3:17 a.m., less than an hour after that rain-soaked god of a man had shown up at her door, said those 6 impossible words, and then left without explanation when she'd stammered that she needed sleep and sobriety before processing whatever the hell was happening. No voicemails. Just call after call after call, like whoever was on the other end couldn't stop themselves from reaching out even when she didn't answer. Isla's thumb hovered over the callback button. She didn't press it. Instead, she dragged herself to the shower, scrubbed off festival grime, and tried to convince herself that last night had been some kind of shared hallucination brought on by dehydration and bass frequencies. Except when she opened her hotel room door to head down for checkout. She nearly tripped over a paper bag sitting on the welcome mat. Expensive paper. The kind that crinkled like silk. Inside, 2 still warm croissants from that French bakery she'd mentioned loving to Zara last week, a container of fresh-cut mango, and a coffee in a real ceramic to-go mug. Not paper, ceramic, the kind fancy cafes used, with her exact order written on the side in sharp, masculine handwriting. Oat milk latte. Extra shot. Light foam. Cinnamon on top. She'd never told anyone that order except baristas. Tucked beneath the coffee was a note card. Heavy stock. Cream-colored. The kind of stationery that cost more per sheet than her monthly streaming subscriptions. The message was brief.
Eat.
You barely touched dinner last night.
K.
Isla's hands shook as she picked up the card.
Dinner.
Last night. He'd been watching her at the festival closely enough to notice she'd skipped the food trucks, too busy chasing shots and catching up with friends. And he knew where she was staying. She never told him her hotel. Over the next 3 days, Isla's carefully controlled life unraveled into something that felt like a fever dream directed by a stalker with unlimited resources and zero concept of boundaries. She went home to her Phoenix apartment. A 3rd-floor walk-up in a converted warehouse near Roosevelt Row, exposed brick and thrift store furniture, and windows that overlooked the light rail tracks. When she pulled into her assigned parking spot, a sleek black Mercedes was idling 2 spaces over. Tinted windows. Nevada plates. Engine running. It stayed there for 6 hours. She ordered her usual Tuesday coffee from Lux Central, the hipster spot 3 blocks from her place, where the baristas knew her name and her order. When she arrived, her drink was already waiting, paid for, the receipt showed, by someone who'd called ahead and described her perfectly. Late 20s, dark hair usually in a messy bun, probably wearing vintage band tees, definitely looks like she needs more sleep. The barista had grinned while relaying this. Your boyfriend's sweet. And generous, he tipped $50. Isla didn't have a boyfriend. She had a photo shoot in Scottsdale that Saturday. A destination wedding at some resort where the ceremony alone cost more than her car. She worked through golden hour, capturing the couple against desert sunset, losing herself in aperture settings and the meditative rhythm of framing moments. When she returned to her Subaru in the parking lot at 9 p.m., Kate Thorne was leaning against the driver's side door. Arms crossed. Expression unreadable. Eyes tracking her approach with the kind of focused intensity that made her feel stripped bare. He didn't say anything. Just watched. Like he had every right to be there. Like her car was his territory now. Isla stopped 10 feet away, keys digging into her palm. Are you serious right now? Your back left tire is low. You should get that checked. His voice was rough velvet in the darkness. And you left your doors unlocked. Anyone could have gotten in. So you what? Stood guard over my car for 3 hours.
4.
The ceremony ran long. He'd been counting. He'd been watching the whole time, tracking her movements, waiting. Something hot and dangerous coiled in Isla's stomach. Fear, maybe. Except fear didn't usually make her skin flush or her breath catch or her traitorous body lean slightly forward like it wanted to close the distance between them. This is stalking, she said, voice not quite steady. This is illegal. This is necessary. The single word cut through her protest like a blade. Cade pushed off her car and moved toward her with that predatory grace she remembered from the festival, fluid and purposeful, every step radiating coiled power. He stopped close enough that she could smell him. Cedar and night air, and that wild thing underneath that made her hindbrain scream contradictory instructions. You're in danger, he said quietly. Every moment you're alone, you're vulnerable. And I can't, his jaw clenched, a muscle ticking. I won't let anything happen to you. The breaking point came on Wednesday evening. Isla was walking through Roosevelt Row, the arts district, walls covered in massive murals, galleries tucked into converted spaces, the kind of neighborhood where artists and trust fund kids and young professionals collided in overpriced bars serving craft cocktails. She'd agreed to meet Zara for dinner at Postino, needed to vent about the insane week she'd been having, needed someone to confirm she wasn't losing her mind. Except she felt eyes on her the entire walk from the light rail station. Not paranoia. Not imagination. The bone-deep certainty that something was tracking her movements, matching her pace, staying just out of sight in the lengthening shadows. Isla spun around on a quiet stretch of sidewalk, heart hammering. I know you're there. For a long moment, nothing. Just the distant hum of traffic and someone's music bleeding from an open studio window. Then Cade stepped out of an alley entrance she'd passed 30 seconds ago. How the hell had he gotten behind her? He looked different in the fading light. Less polished billionaire, more dangerous stranger. Dark jeans. Black Henley that clung to shoulders that seemed even broader than she remembered. Hair slightly messed like he'd been running his hands through it. And those eyes, burning amber in the dusk, catching the last rays of sun like an animal's. Isla's hands clenched into fists. Are you following me? Because this is illegal.
And creepy.
And if you don't back off right now, I'm calling the cops. He moved.
Fast.
Faster than should be possible. 1 second, he was 10 feet away. The next, he was right there, one hand braced against the brick wall beside her head, the other gripping the window ledge above, effectively caging her in without actually touching her. The night air crackled with heat. Call them, Cade said, voice low and rough. Explain to the police that you are being protected by a Werewolf Alpha who can smell the 3 vampires that have been circling your apartment complex for 2 days. Tell them about the rogue shifter from Tucson who followed you to that wedding shoot, waiting for a moment when you were alone in the parking lot. See how that goes. Isla's breath caught. Werewolf. Vampires. You're actually insane. I'm actually trying to keep you alive. He leaned closer, and she could feel the warmth radiating off him, could see the way his pupils dilated when he breathed in her scent. You have no idea what you've awakened. Awakened? Dude, I spilled a drink on you. That's not some mystical event. My wolf imprinted on you. The words came out sharp. Final. Do you understand what that means? That you need therapy? A laugh rumbled through his chest, dark and humorless. It means every supernatural creature in a 100-mile radius can now smell my claim on you. It means you've been marked by an alpha, and to the rest of them, you're either leverage or a threat. It means rival packs will see you as a way to hurt me. It means you're in danger every second you're not by my side. Isla's mouth went dry. This was crazy. This was certifiably unhinged. Except his eyes were so steady, so absolutely certain, and there was something in his voice. Desperation wrapped in command that made her faltering disbelief crack. You're insane, she whispered. Probably. He reached up slowly, giving her time to flinch away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingertips grazed her cheekbone, and electricity shot through her nerve endings. The tenderness in that gesture, such contrast to the barely leashed violence in his posture, broke something in her chest. But you're mine, and I protect what's mine. They ended up in his car. Not because Isla agreed to anything, but because 2 men rounded the corner at the far end of the block, moving too smoothly, eyes reflecting streetlight in a way human eyes shouldn't, and Cade had growled, actually growled, grabbed her hand, and pulled her toward the black Mercedes she'd seen haunting her apartment complex. Now she sat in buttersoft leather seats that probably cost more than her rent, watching Phoenix lights blur past the window, while Cade drove them toward the outskirts of the city, with white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. Say it again, Isla demanded. The part where you're a werewolf. Because I need to hear how ridiculous that sounds out loud. Werewolves exist. Cade's voice was tight. We've lived hidden in human society for thousands of years. Packs operate in every major city. We have hierarchies,
Laws.
territories, and alphas. He gestured to himself. Lead those packs. And you're an alpha. Of the Sonoran pack. Strongest pack in the Southwest. 300 members. Operations spanning Phoenix to Las Vegas to Albuquerque. He glanced at her, eyes flashing amber. Also a billionaire CEO of a tech conglomerate, but that's mostly a cover for moving pack resources. Isla laughed, high and slightly hysterical. This is insane. It's the truth. Then prove it.
Shift.
Show me fur and fangs and… Not here. His jaw clenched. Shifting in a moving vehicle on a highway is a good way to cause a 20-car pileup. Convenient. They pulled into the empty parking lot of a desert preserve. Nothing but scrub brush and distant mountains and stars, so thick they looked like spilled sugar. Cade killed the engine. Silence pressed in, broken only by their breathing. Mates, he said finally, are sacred in our world.
Rare.
Maybe 1 in 1,000 wolves ever finds theirs. The bond happens instantly, a recognition on a soul-deep level. Scent compatibility. Biological imperative. The wolf knows before the human half catches up. He turned to face her fully. My wolf knew you were mine the second your drink touched my skin. Isla's heart slammed against her ribs. I'm human. I know. So, this bond thing made a mistake. It doesn't make mistakes.
His voice softened.
You're my mate, Isla. My perfect match. The person my soul has been searching for across lifetimes. And normally that would be cause for celebration. Pack-wide parties. Ancient ceremonies. Joy. But his expression went dark. But my pack has laws. Old laws. Alphas can only mate within werewolf bloodlines. It maintains genetic strength, prevents dilution of power. And if I claim a human, he paused, throat working, the pack elders will invoke the old codes. Execution for both of us. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Isla couldn't breathe, couldn't process. This man, this gorgeous, terrifying, allegedly supernatural man, was telling her they were destined to be together and also destined to die for it. So let me go, she whispered, tears burning her eyes. If this is so dangerous, if being near me puts you at risk, just walk away. Cade's eyes flashed pure molten gold. I'd rather burn the whole pack to the ground than spend one more night without you. He kissed her, right there in his car, with stars burning overhead and danger circling them like wolves. He cupped her face in hands that trembled slightly and kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. It wasn't gentle, wasn't tentative. It was claiming and desperate, and so consuming that Isla forgot how to think. His mouth moved against hers with bruising intensity, all heat and hunger and barely restrained need. She tasted desperation on his tongue, felt the growl that rumbled through his chest when she kissed him back. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and the world tilted. This wasn't just attraction, wasn't just chemistry. It was recognition, like every cell in her body had been waiting for him, like she'd been incomplete her entire life, and only now, with his hands in her hair and his breath mixing with hers, did she feel whole. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Isla pressed her forehead to his. This is crazy, she breathed. I know. We're going to get killed. Probably. And you don't care. Cade pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. His glowed amber in the darkness, and Isla realized with distant shock that she believed him. Believed all of it. Because no human's eyes glowed like that. I've spent 15 years building control, he said roughly. 15 years as Alpha, making calculated decisions, never letting emotion override logic. And then you crashed into my life with a strawberry margarita and demolished every wall I've ever built. He traced her lower lip with his thumb. So no. I don't care about the danger. I don't care about the laws. I only care about keeping you safe. And mine. Isla's breath shuddered out. What happens now?
Now.
His smile was dark and fierce. Now I teach you how to survive in my world. And we figure out how to change the laws before they kill us both. Chapter 3. They agreed to keep it secret. No pack, no public, no trace. Just stolen moments in the dark where Isla and Cade could pretend the world wasn't actively trying to tear them apart, that ancient laws didn't demand their deaths, that loving each other wasn't the most dangerous thing either of them had ever done. And for 3 perfect, Heartbreaking weeks, they almost made themselves believe it. It started small. Careful. Cade would text her after her photography shoots, never calling. Texts could be deleted, calls left records, and she'd find him waiting 2 blocks away in whatever vehicle he'd borrowed that day. Never the Mercedes. Too recognizable. Too obviously his. He'd drive them out into the Sonoran desert, past the sprawl of Phoenix where streetlights gave way to darkness, so complete the stars looked close enough to touch. They'd park on dirt roads that wound between saguaro cacti standing like sentinels, and they'd talk. About everything. About nothing. Cade told her about wolf culture, the rigid hierarchies where alphas ruled absolutely, the beta enforcers who kept order, the omegas who smoothed pack tensions. He explained moon cycles, how the full moon pulled at their beasts, made control harder, made the wolf ride closer to the surface. How mates could feel each other across distances once the bond fully settled, emotions bleeding through like shared heartbeats. It's already starting, he admitted one night, fingers tracing patterns on her palm while they sat on the hood of a borrowed truck, desert wind carrying the scent of creosote. When you're anxious, I feel it here. He pressed her hand to his chest. Like my heart's racing even when I'm completely still. When you're happy, I get this rush of warmth. And when you're scared. His jaw clenched. When you're scared, my wolf goes absolutely feral. Isla's breath caught. That sound intense. It is. His eyes found hers in the darkness, glowing faint amber. It's also the most incredible thing I've ever experienced. Feeling you, knowing you, being connected on a level most people will never understand. She kissed him then, soft and slow, tasting the wonder in his words. And Isla taught him things too. Things he'd forgotten in 15 years of being alpha, of carrying the weight of 300 lives on his shoulders, of never showing weakness or softness, or anything that could be exploited. She taught him how to laugh at stupid videos on her phone, dogs doing ridiculous things, comedians with perfect timing. Taught him to dance badly in her tiny kitchen at 2 a.m., swaying to pop songs while waiting for frozen pizza to cook because neither of them could actually cook worth a damn. Taught him that existing didn't have to mean dominance and strategy and constant vigilance. That sometimes it could just mean being. You're different with me, she observed one night, curled against his side on her thrift store couch, some Netflix show playing forgotten in the background. Her apartment was tiny, exposed brick, mismatched furniture, string lights casting everything in warm gold, but it had become their sanctuary. Cade's fingers traced idle patterns on her shoulder. How so? Lighter. Less. She searched for the word. Less like you're carrying the world. More like you're just Cade. Something vulnerable flickered across his face. I've been alpha since I was 17. My father died in a territory fight, and I had to challenge for leadership before I was ready. I've spent half my life being what the pack needed, strong, ruthless, uncompromising. His voice dropped. I forgot I could be anything else. Until you. Isla pressed her lips to his jaw. I like this version of you. Yeah. His arms tightened around her. The one who's breaking every law and risking everything? The one who's finally living. Their chemistry was electric in a way that defied logic, defied sanity. Every touch sent sparks racing across Isla's skin. When Cade kissed her, and he kissed her constantly, like he couldn't help himself, like the mate bond demanded contact, it was consuming, all-encompassing, the kind of kisses that erase the world. He'd cage her against walls, hands tangled in her hair, mouth moving against hers with desperate intensity. She'd fist her hands in his shirt, pulling him closer, always closer, never close enough. Their breaths would mingle in gasps and sighs and sounds that made heat pool low in her belly. The mate bond amplified everything. Isla could hear Cade's heartbeat thundering in time with hers, could feel his warmth seeping into her skin like they were melting together, could sense the razor edge of his control, the way his wolf prowled just beneath the surface, demanding he claim her fully. The things he whispered to me in the dark, Isla would tell Zara later, voice hushed and awed, the way he touched me like I was sacred and sinful all at once. I'd never felt so alive, so wanted, so terrified that this perfect, impossible thing would shatter. Because it was perfect, and impossible, and absolutely doomed. Cade would press kisses to her throat, teeth grazing her pulse, never breaking skin, never marking her in ways that would alert the pack, but close enough that Isla felt the restraint vibrating through him. His hands would map her body with reverent intensity, learning every curve, every place that made her gasp. And she'd explore him in turn. The hard planes of his chest, the scars that decorated his ribs, territorial fights, he'd explained, battles for dominance. The way his breath hitched when she traced the tattoo on his shoulder blade, a wolf's head surrounded by ancient symbols that meant protection, strength, loyalty. They'd fall asleep tangled together in her bed, Cade's larger frame curled protectively around hers, and Isla would lie awake listening to him breathe, memorizing the weight of him, terrified of the moment this all came crashing down. Reality intruded in small ways at first, then bigger ones. Cade started missing pack meetings. His second-in-command, Sonoran, a beta wolf with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, began asking questions about his alpha's distraction. Where was he disappearing to 3 nights a week? Why did he smell different lately, like he'd been rolling in wildflowers and cinnamon? Rival alphas from Tucson noticed the Sonoran pack's leader seemed weakened, distracted. They started testing boundaries, pushing into disputed territories, seeing if Cade would enforce his claims or if his attention was elsewhere. And Isla's best friend Zara, brilliant, observant, absolutely relentless Zara, cornered her after a girls' brunch at a cafe in downtown Phoenix. Okay, spill. Zara set down her mimosa with exaggerated care. You've been weird for 3 weeks, disappearing at odd hours, smiling at your phone like a crazy person. And is that a hickey on your neck? Isla's hand flew to her throat, covering the faint marks Cade's mouth had left the night before. Passion marks. Not bites. He was fanatically careful about that, but evidence nonetheless. It's nothing. It's clearly something. Zara leaned forward, concern etched in her expression. Are you seeing someone?
Because you can tell me.
You know that, right? Isla's resolve crumbled. She couldn't keep this from Zara. Couldn't keep lying to the person who'd been her best friend since college, who'd helped her move into her apartment, who knew her better than anyone. So she told her. Everything. The festival. The drink. Cade Thorne. Werewolves.
Mates.
The death sentence hanging over them like a guillotine blade. Zara stared at her for a long, silent moment. Then, so you're dating a supernatural mob boss who could get you killed, and you're into it? It's not like that.
Isla. Babe.
That's exactly what it's like. But Zara's voice had gone soft. Worried. You love him. Oh my God. You're in love with him. Isla buried her face in her hands. I know it's insane. I know it happened too fast. But Z, I love him. I don't know how else to explain it. It's like he's the other half of my soul, and being apart from him physically hurts. My chest aches when he's gone. I can feel him sometimes, his emotions bleeding into mine, and it's terrifying and perfect and you're going to get your heart broken. Or worse. Zara reached across the table, gripping Isla's wrist. Girl, you need to either run for your life or go all in. There's no middle ground with a man who'd burn down the world for you. The storm hit Phoenix without warning. Desert storms were always dramatic, lightning splitting the sky, rain hammering down in sheets, flash flood warnings lighting up phones. But this one was different, violent, like the sky itself was angry. Isla was home alone, editing photos on her laptop, when thunder rattled her windows hard enough to make her jump. Rain drummed against glass in a deafening roar. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. She fumbled for her phone, using the flashlight to navigate to where she kept candles, and that's when she heard the knock. 3 sharp raps.
Urgent.
Isla's heart jumped into her throat. She checked the time, 3:17 a.m. Nobody knocked at 3 in the morning unless something was catastrophically wrong. She opened the door. Cade stood in the hallway, absolutely drenched. Water streamed from his hair, his clothes, pooling at his feet. He was shaking, subtle tremors running through his powerful frame, and his eyes glowed pure amber in the darkness. Cade. He stepped inside and pulled her against him with desperate force, burying his face in her hair, arms banding around her like he was trying to fuse them together. His whole body trembled. Isla's hands came up instinctively, holding him just as tightly. What happened? Are you hurt?
No.
His voice was wrecked.
Raw.
I'm scared, Isla. The admission punched through her chest. This man, this alpha who commanded hundreds, who radiated power and control, who'd faced down rival packs and never flinched, was scared. Scared of what? That I won't be strong enough to keep you safe. He pulled back just enough to cup her face, water dripping from his hair onto her skin. His eyes searched hers with devastating intensity. Soren's asking questions. The Tucson pack is circling. And Elder Cyrus, one of the pack leaders. He's been suspicious of me for weeks. I can feel the walls closing in, and I don't know how to protect you from what's coming. Isla's throat tightened. She'd never seen him like this, stripped bare, vulnerable, the alpha mask completely gone. Then we run, she whispered. Leave Phoenix. Start over somewhere they can't find us. They'd hunt us forever. Alphas don't run. And mates. His thumb traced her cheekbone. The bond makes us traceable. They could track us to the ends of the earth. So, what do we do? Cade's forehead pressed to hers, his breath shuddering out. I don't know. For the first time in 15 years, I don't have a plan. I just know that losing you would destroy me. And I can't. I won't let that happen. They sank to the floor together, backs against the door, Cade's wet clothes soaking into hers. He curled around her like she was the only safe place in his entire world. This powerful, terrifying man who'd conquered packs and built empires, reduced to trembling in her arms. And Isla held him, ran her fingers through his wet hair, pressed kisses to his temple and whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. We'll figure it out, she murmured.
Together.
We'll find a way. Cade's arms tightened around her. You shouldn't have to fight my battles. I'm not fighting your battles. I'm fighting for us. She tilted his face up, meeting those glowing amber eyes. You're not just my mate, Cade. I'm yours too. And that means we protect each other. No matter what. Something broke in his expression, relief and desperation and love so intense it took her breath away. He kissed her with bruising force, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact of lips and tongue and shared breath. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he rasped. I should have said it before. I love you so much it terrifies me. Tears burned Isla's eyes. I love you too. Even though you're impossible and overprotective and stalked me for a week. A broken laugh shook through him, especially because of that. Maybe. She kissed him again, softer. Stay tonight. Please. Cade nodded against her, and they stayed there on her apartment floor, wrapped around each other while the storm raged outside, pretending for just a few more hours that love could be enough to save them. Chapter 4. Isla thought the danger would come from Cade's pack, from ancient laws and elder wolves who saw her humanity as corruption. She was wrong. The danger came from someone she trusted. Someone close enough to know her schedule, her weaknesses, her exact location on the one night Cade couldn't protect her. And it almost killed her. The Las Vegas Alpha Summit happened once a year. 3 days of territorial negotiations, resource agreements, and the kind of supernatural politics that could start wars or broker decades of peace. Every pack leader in the western United States attended. Missing it wasn't an option, not if Cade wanted to maintain his position and protect Sonoran pack interests. He'd asked Isla to come with him. Begged, actually, which was so unlike him it made her chest ache. They'd been lying in her bed at dawn, tangled together after a night that had left them both breathless, when he brought it up. Come to Vegas with me, Cade murmured against her hair. I can book you a separate room if you want the pretense of discretion, but I need you close. 3 days feels like 3 years. Isla had wanted to say yes.
God, she'd wanted to.
But her photography exhibition was opening that same weekend. A group show at a respected gallery in downtown Phoenix featuring emerging artists. Her first real break. The kind of opportunity that could launch her career or disappear if she didn't show up. I can't, she'd whispered, hating the words. This exhibition, it's everything I've been working toward. If I bail, I might never get another chance. Cade's jaw had clenched. She'd felt his frustration through the bond, sharp and visceral. Then postpone it. Reschedule. You can't just reschedule a gallery show. There are 10 other artists, collectors coming in from. I don't care about collectors. He pulled back to look at her, eyes flashing amber. Isla, you don't understand how dangerous it is for you here without me. The pack's on edge. Rival alphas are circling. And if something happens, nothing's going to happen. She'd cupped his face, trying to soothe the wolf she could feel prowling beneath his skin. It's 3 days. I'll stay home when I'm not at the gallery. Zara will be with me the whole time. I'll be careful. Careful isn't enough. Cade. She'd kissed him softly. You can't protect me from everything. And I can't put my entire life on hold because the supernatural world is complicated. This exhibition matters. Please, trust me. He'd stared at her for a long moment, conflict warring in his expression. Then he'd exhaled hard and pulled her back against his chest, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. 3 days, he'd growled. You check in every 4 hours. You don't go anywhere alone after dark. And if anything feels wrong, you call me immediately. I promise. It was a promise she'd lived to regret. The gallery opening was perfect. Better than perfect. Isla's photos hung on white walls under carefully positioned spotlights. Intimate portraits of festival-goers lost in music, street performers caught mid-performance, couples dancing in parking lots. Moments of raw human connection frozen in time. Collectors circulated with wine glasses, discussing composition and emotional resonance. Several people asked for her card. A woman from a Phoenix arts magazine wanted to feature her in an upcoming profile. Zara stood beside her, practically vibrating with excitement. Dude, you're killing it. That guy in the expensive suit just bought 3 prints. Isla smiled, but it felt tight.
Wrong.
Because underneath the triumph, underneath the validation of years of work finally paying off, anxiety gnawed at her stomach. Cade had texted her 6 times. Called twice. Each message more tense than the last.
Check in. Now.
Isla, I need to know you're safe. The summit's running late. I can't get away. Please respond. She'd texted back reassurances, but they felt hollow. Because something did feel wrong. Had felt wrong since she'd woken up that morning with a knot of dread in her chest that wouldn't dissolve. The mate bond, she realized. Cade's anxiety was bleeding through their connection, amplifying her own until she felt like her skin was crawling. You okay? Zara touched her arm. You look pale. I'm fine. Just tired. Isla forced another smile. I'm going to head out soon. Get some sleep. Want me to walk you to your car? No, you should stay. Network. One of us should enjoy this properly. She hugged Zara tight. Thank you for being here. Always. Isla grabbed her camera bag, never went anywhere without it, and slipped out into the Phoenix night. The gallery was in a revitalized downtown district, all trendy restaurants and converted warehouses. Her car was parked 2 blocks away in a public lot. The November air had that desert chill that came after sundown, sharp and clean. Her footsteps echoed on empty sidewalk. Most businesses had closed for the night. The restaurants were winding down. She was halfway to the parking lot when the hair on the back of her neck stood up. That feeling. The one prey animals got right before the predator struck. Isla's hand tightened on her camera bag strap. She walked faster, pulse kicking up, and pulled out her phone to call Cade. 3 figures stepped out of the shadows ahead, blocking her path. They weren't human. Isla knew that instantly, viscerally. The way they moved was too fluid, too predatory. Their eyes caught the streetlight and reflected it back, gold and eerie and wrong. Werewolves. The one in front, tall, muscular, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, grinned, and his canines were too long. Too sharp. The Alpha's little human pet. His voice was gravel and malice. You're worth a fortune to the Tucson pack. Isla's blood turned to ice. She took a step back. Then another. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult our intelligence. The scarred wolf moved closer. We can smell Cade Thorn all over you. His claim. His scent. You reek of him. He inhaled deeply, grotesquely. And you reek of fear.
Good.
You should be scared. The other two fanned out, flanking her, cutting off escape routes. Tucson pack. Cade had mentioned them, rivals who'd been testing boundaries, pushing into Sonoran territory. And now they were here, hunting her. Leverage. That's what she was. A bargaining chip to force Cade into surrendering territory, resources, power. Isla's hand dove into her bag. Fingers closing around the pepper spray, she kept clipped to the inside pocket. Stay back. I'm warning you. The scarred wolf laughed. You're warning us? Human, we could tear you apart before you blinked. Then why haven't you? She forced her voice steady, even though she was shaking. You need me alive, don't you? I'm worthless dead. His grin widened. Smart girl. Yeah, we need you breathing. But nobody said anything about undamaged. He lunged. Isla sprayed him full in the face. The wolf howled, a sound that was more animal than human, and stumbled back, clawing at his eyes. Isla didn't wait.
She ran.
Sneakers pounding pavement, camera bag banging against her hip, lungs burning as she sprinted toward the parking lot. Behind her, snarls and footsteps. Too fast, impossibly fast, gaining ground. She made it 1 block before hands grabbed her jacket and yanked her backward. Isla twisted, swinging her camera bag like a weapon. The heavy DSLR inside connected with someone's face, satisfying crunch of cartilage breaking, and she was loose again, running, screaming for help that wouldn't come because the streets were empty. She cut into an alley, stupid, so stupid, but the parking lot was right there just beyond, and the wolves cut her off at the other end.
Trapped.
The scarred one stepped forward, nose bleeding, eyes watering but furious. That was a mistake. Isla backed against the brick wall, chest heaving, mind racing through options that didn't exist. She couldn't fight them, couldn't outrun them, couldn't. A massive gray wolf dropped from the fire escape above, landing between Isla and the Tucson pack with a snarl that shook the alley walls. The gray wolf was enormous, bigger than any dog, all muscle and fangs and barely restrained violence. His hackles were raised, lips curled back to reveal teeth that could shred steel, and his eyes glowed amber with alpha command. Not Cade. The coloring was wrong, but the power radiating off him was unmistakable.
Sonoran.
Cade's second in command. The Tucson wolves hesitated. 3 against 1 should have been easy odds, but betas didn't challenge pack seconds unless they were suicidal. Sonoran held rank, held power, and he was pissed. The scarred wolf shifted his weight. This doesn't concern you, beta. Walk away. Sonoran's response was a growl that rattled Isla's bones. Then he attacked. It was brutal, efficient. No posturing or dominance games, just raw violence executed with surgical precision. Sonoran's jaws closed around the scarred wolf's shoulder, shaking him like a rag doll before throwing him into the alley wall hard enough to crack brick. The second wolf tried to flank him. Sonoran spun, faster than should be possible for something his size, and his claws raked deep furrows across the attacker's ribs. The third wolf, smarter than his companions, turned and ran. The other 2 followed seconds later, limping and bleeding, disappearing into the night with their tails literally between their legs. Sonoran watched them go, body still tense, ready for another attack. When he was certain they were gone, he shifted. The transformation was disturbing even though Isla had known it was coming, bones cracking and reforming, for receding, until Sonoran stood there in human form, naked and bleeding from several deep gashes across his chest and arms. He grabbed a jacket someone had left draped over a dumpster and shrugged it on. You good? Isla nodded, still pressed against the wall, shaking so violently her teeth chattered. Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. His expression was grim. He pulled a phone from the jacket pocket and tossed it to her. Call Cade. Tell him what happened. He needs to know. Isla's fingers fumbled with the phone. How did you find me? How did you know? I've been following you for 2 days. Soren's jaw clenched. Cade asked me to watch over you while he was in Vegas. Good thing I did. Relief crashed through her, followed immediately by horror. If Soren hadn't been there, she dialed Cade with shaking hands. He answered on the first ring, voice tight with barely controlled panic. Isla. I'm okay. I'm safe. But Cade. Her voice broke. The Tucson pack.
They tried to kidnap me.
They knew where I'd be. They knew about the exhibition. The line went dead silent. Then, I'm coming. Stay with Soren. Don't move. I'll be there in 4 hours. The summit. Fuck the summit.
His voice was raw.
Farrell, you're more important than any territorial agreement. I'm leaving now. Cade, wait. But he'd already hung up. Soren drove Isla to a safe house outside Scottsdale, a nondescript ranch house tucked into the desert foothills, warded with supernatural protections she couldn't see but could feel crawling across her skin. He sat her down at the kitchen table, handed her water she couldn't drink, and said the words that shattered what was left of her world. There's a traitor in the pack. Isla's head snapped up. What? Someone told the Tucson Wolves where you'd be tonight. Gave them your schedule, your location, probably even a description. Soren's expression was carved from stone. Someone in Cade's inner circle wants him gone, and they're using you to make it happen. The water glass slipped from Isla's numb fingers, shattering on the tile floor.
Who?
I don't know yet, but there's more. He leaned forward, and his eyes held the kind of grim truth that preceded catastrophes. The pack elders found out about the mate bond. About you. And they've issued an ultimatum. Isla's chest constricted. What kind of ultimatum? They're demanding Cade renounce you publicly at the Vegas summit. In front of every alpha in the western United States. He is to declare the bond void, reject you as his mate, and swear never to see you again. Soren paused. Or face execution by silver blade. The room tilted. Isla gripped the table edge, knuckles white. And me. If he doesn't renounce you, they'll kill you too. Publicly. To make an example. His voice gentled fractionally. The old laws are clear. Alphas mate within pack bloodlines or they die. There are no exceptions. He won't do it. Isla's voice was barely a whisper. He won't renounce me. I know. Soren pulled something from his jacket. A plane ticket and a thick envelope. He slid them across the table. Which is why you need to disappear. Tonight. Isla stared at the ticket. Seattle. Departing in 3 hours. The envelope was stuffed with cash. She didn't count it, but it looked like thousands. You're asking me to run. I'm giving you a chance to survive. Soren's expression was bleak. If you stay, Cade will fight the elders. He'll burn down the entire pack before letting them touch you. And he'll die. They'll execute him with silver, and you'll watch it happen, and then they'll execute you too. So, I abandon him. Tears burned Isla's eyes. I'd just leave. Vanish. Let him think I chose to run. You let him live. Soren's hand covered hers, brief, grounding. The bond will hurt. For both of you. But pain fades. Death is permanent. Isla looked at the plane ticket. At the cash. At the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Stay and watch Cade die protecting her. Watch them both die for the crime of loving each other. Or run. Break his heart. Break her own. Save his life by destroying everything they'd built. He'll come after me, she whispered. Not if you make him believe you want to go. Not if you tell him the bond was a mistake. Soren's voice was rough with sympathy. It'll be the hardest thing you've ever done. But it's the only way he survives. Isla Vaughn had 2 choices. Run to Seattle and break both their hearts, but keep Kate alive. Or stay in Phoenix and watch the man she loved get executed by his own pack for the crime of choosing her. She took the ticket. Sonoran drove her to the airport in silence, walked her to security, waited until she was through and couldn't turn back. And Isla boarded a red-eye flight to Seattle with $5,000 in cash, a plane ticket to nowhere, and the taste of betrayal bitter on her tongue. Because sometimes loving someone meant leaving them, even when it killed you, even when you knew they'd never forgive you, even when you weren't sure you'd survive the distance. The plane lifted off, and through the mate bond, Isla felt the exact moment Cade's heart shattered. Felt his howl of anguish echo through her chest like a physical wound. And she closed her eyes and let the tears come, knowing she'd just made the worst decision of her life. Knowing it was also the only one that kept him breathing.
Chapter 5. Isla ran.
She's not proud of it. Not even a little bit. But she ran, fled Phoenix in the middle of the night with nothing but a backpack, $5,000 in cash, and a heart that was already shattering into pieces too small to ever reassemble. And it was the worst mistake of her life. Seattle swallowed her whole. The city was everything Phoenix wasn't, gray and wet and perpetually shrouded in mist that made the world feel muffled, distant, like she was living underwater. Isla crashed with a cousin she barely knew, a woman named Tessa who worked in tech and asked minimal questions when Isla showed up at her doorstep at 2 a.m. looking like a refugee from her own life. Stay as long as you need, Tessa had said, eyes kind but cautious. No pressure. Isla got a job at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, the kind of place with exposed brick and indie music and customers who paid $7 for oat milk lattes without blinking. She pulled espresso shots and learned to smile through the ache that never left her chest and pretended she was building a new life. She wasn't. She was barely surviving. Because the mate bond didn't care about geography. Didn't care that she'd put 1,200 miles between herself and Cade Thorne. The connection still pulsed between them like a live wire, frayed and damaged, but refusing to break completely. And through it Isla felt everything. His rage in the first days, white-hot and consuming, crashing through her ribs like shockwaves until she had to lock herself in Tessa's bathroom and sob into a towel so her cousin wouldn't hear. His anguish when he realized she wasn't coming back, grief so profound it made her throw up in the alley behind the coffee shop during her shift. His desperate searching, panic and determination bleeding through until Isla couldn't tell where her emotions ended and his began. It was like being stabbed in the chest every single hour. Like someone had hollowed her out and filled the empty space with broken glass. Cade returned from Las Vegas to find Isla gone. Sonoran met him at his penthouse. The sprawling space overlooking Phoenix that suddenly felt cavernous and cold without her scent embedded in the furniture, without her laughter echoing off the walls. Where is she? Cade's voice was dangerously calm.
Too calm.
Sonoran explained everything.
The attack.
The Tucson Wolves. The traitor in their ranks. The Elder's ultimatum. The choice he'd forced on Isla, run or watch them both die. When he finished, Cade stood perfectly still for 10 seconds. Then he threw his second-in-command through a wall. The drywall exploded. Sonoran crashed into the hallway, rolled to his feet, and wisely stayed down, head bowed in submission even as blood trickled from his split lip. You sent her away. Cade's voice was barely human. His eyes blazed pure gold. You took my mate, and you sent her away. I saved your life. I didn't ask you to save me. The roar shook the windows. Cade's control shattered. His wolf surged forward. Not fully shifting, but close, so close. Claws extending, fangs dropping, alpha power rolling off him in waves that made Sonoran whimper despite himself. And then Cade howled. The sound was inhuman, anguished. The kind of sound a wolf makes when its mate dies, when everything that matters is ripped away, when the world stops making sense. It echoed through the penthouse, through the building, through Phoenix itself. Every supernatural creature in the city felt it and flinched, because an alpha's grief was a dangerous, terrible thing. Cade tore the city apart looking for her. He called in every favor he'd ever accumulated, threatened rival packs with annihilation if they were hiding her, sent wolves to every bus station, train depot, airport within 200 miles. He tracked her phone, disconnected her credit cards, and used her friends. Zara stonewalled him with tears streaming down her face, saying she didn't know where Isla went, and Cade believed her because the terror in her scent was genuine. He spent 3 days hunting, 72 hours without sleep, running on rage and desperation and the mate bond that told him she was alive but couldn't tell him where. On the 4th day, he stood in her empty apartment. Someone had packed her things in boxes. Probably Zara. The space was hollow, echoing, smelling faintly of cinnamon and wildflowers and heartbreak.
Cade sank
To the floor in the middle of her living room, where they'd danced at 2 a.m., where she'd taught him how to be soft, where he'd held her and promised to protect her, and something inside him broke. Not shattered.
broke
Clean through, like a bone snapping under too much pressure. His wolf retreated deep inside, howling in a place Cade couldn't reach. And for the first time since he was 17 years old, since he'd challenged for Alpha and won, Cade Thorne felt utterly, devastatingly powerless. Isla wrote letters she never sent. Late at night, when Tessa was asleep and the rain drummed against windows and the loneliness threatened to consume her entirely, she'd pull out a notebook and pour her heart onto paper in ink that sometimes smeared from tears.
Cade.
I miss the way you smell like cedar and night air. I miss your stupid jokes about moon phases, the ones that weren't even funny but made me laugh anyway because you were so proud of them. I miss your hands in my hair, your voice in the dark, the way you looked at me like I was the only real thing in your entire world. I miss feeling safe. I didn't even know I was unsafe until you showed me what protection felt like, what being cherished felt like. I love you. I will always love you.
And I'm so sorry.
But this was the only way to keep you alive. And I'd rather live in a world where you exist, even if I can't be with you, than watch them kill you for choosing me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
She filled notebooks, stacked them in Tessa's spare closet, unsent messages to a man she could still feel through the bond, his grief a constant weight pressing against her sternum. And Cade, alone in his penthouse, talked to empty air like she could hear him. Come back. His voice was raw, broken.
Please, Isla.
I'll give up the pack. I'll renounce my title. I'll give up everything, the money, the power, all of it. Just come back. She couldn't hear him, but the bond carried his desperation anyway, bleeding into her dreams, turning them into nightmares where she watched him fade. For weeks Isla collapsed. It happened at work. She was steaming milk for a cappuccino when the world tilted sideways. Pain lanced through her chest, sharp and vicious, like someone had reached in and squeezed her heart. Her vision blurred. The milk pitcher slipped from numb fingers, clattering to the floor. Isla?
Isla.
She heard her manager shouting, felt hands catching her before she hit the ground. Then nothing. She woke up in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and recycled air, fluorescent lights too bright, machines beeping steadily beside her bed. Sonoran was sitting in the visitor's chair. Isla's heart lurched. She tried to sit up and her body screamed in protest. What are you doing here? Cade sent me. Sonoran looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, tension carved into every line of his face. You collapsed. They ran tests. The doctors think it's stress, maybe an undiagnosed heart condition. His eyes met hers. But we both know what it really is. The mate bond. Stretched too thin. Fraying. Werewolves aren't meant to be separated from their mates, Sonoran continued quietly. It causes physical deterioration. The wolf side weakens first, then the human side follows. You're human, so we didn't know if the bond would affect you the same way, but he gestured to the hospital room. Apparently it does. Isla's throat closed. How long? The doctors want to keep you for observation, run more tests. How long do I have? Soren's jaw clenched. If you stay separated? maybe a month, maybe less. Your body is shutting down because half your soul is missing. Tears burned her eyes. And Cade. He's dying too. Soren's voice cracked. His wolf has gone feral. He's not sleeping, barely eating, and he's losing control. The pack is falling apart because their alpha is falling apart. If you don't come back, if you both don't fix this, you'll both be dead within the month. Isla closed her eyes. For weeks of pain. For weeks of pretending she could survive this. And her body was proving what her heart already knew. She couldn't. But going back meant watching Cade face execution. Meant the elders would carry out their threat. Meant both of them dying anyway, just slower, just more publicly. Then I have to end this, she whispered. For real. Soren went still. What do you mean? If the bond is killing us, I have to sever it completely. Make him believe it's over. Make him. Her voice broke. Make him stop looking for me. She called Cade for the first time in a month. Her hands shook so violently, she almost dropped the phone 3 times before managing to dial. It rang once.
Twice.
He answered before the 3rd ring, and the sound of his voice, rough and desperate and so achingly familiar, nearly destroyed her resolve. Isla. Just her name, but packed with so much hope, so much raw need, that she had to bite her lip to keep from sobbing. Don't come looking for me, she said. The words felt like swallowing glass. Silence. Then, where are you? Are you hurt? Let me. I don't love you. The lie tasted like poison. The mate bond was a mistake. Some kind of supernatural glitch. I don't want this. I don't want you. She heard his breath catch. Felt his shock slam through the bond like a physical blow. You're lying. His voice was barely controlled. I can feel you, Isla. I can feel your pain through the bond. You're lying. It's over, Cade. Tears streamed down her face, but she kept her voice steady. Cold. Find someone else. Some werewolf who fits your world. I'm done.
Don't call me.
Don't look for me. We're finished. Isla, please. She hung up, and through the mate bond, she felt something inside him die. Felt his anguish spike so intensely that monitors beside her hospital bed started alarming. Felt his howl, even though he was 1,200 miles away. Isla curled into a ball and wept until she couldn't breathe, until nurses rushed in with concerned faces and sedatives, until blessed unconsciousness took her under. She'd done it. Saved his life with a lie that would haunt her forever. Except she'd underestimated one crucial thing. Cade Thorne didn't give up. Ever. 2 days after that call. After Isla had been released from the hospital and returned to Tessa's apartment, after she'd convinced herself she could survive this, after she'd started to believe he'd actually let her go, she woke up at 3 a.m. to find him standing in her doorway. Rain-soaked, eyes blazing pure gold, looking at her with such intensity that her breath stopped. Tessa's apartment had locks, a security system, and Cade had walked through them like they didn't exist. Isla sat up in bed, heart hammering, unable to speak, unable to move. Cade took one step into the room, then another, stopped at the foot of her bed, and said 7 words that stopped her heart completely. You're a terrible liar, little wolf. He'd come for her, crossed 1,200 miles, ignored her rejection, saw through her lies, and came for her anyway. And Isla knew, with absolute, terrifying certainty, that running was over. Now came the reckoning. Chapter 6. Cade flew to Seattle. Tracked Isla down through the mate bond like she was a beacon he couldn't ignore even if he wanted to. And he wasn't there to beg. Wasn't there to negotiate or plead or give her space. He was there to claim her. Consequences be damned. Old laws be damned. Entire pack be damned. Because Cade Thorne had finally figured out what mattered. And it wasn't power. It was her. The moment Cade stepped fully into Isla's bedroom, the mate bond sang. That was the only word for it. After weeks of frayed agony, of feeling like half her soul was missing, the connection suddenly blazed to life, golden and warm and so overwhelmingly right that Isla gasped. She scrambled out of bed, putting distance between them, even though her body screamed to close it. You can't be here. Cade, you need to leave.
No.
The single word was absolute. Final. He moved toward her with that predatory grace she remembered, rain still dripping from his hair, his clothes, like he'd walked through a storm to get here. His eyes glowed amber in the darkness, fixed on her with such intensity she felt pinned. You lied to me, he said, voice rough. On that phone call. You lied. I didn't. You told me you didn't love me. That the bond was a mistake. He stopped inches away, close enough that she could feel his heat, smell cedar and night air, and desperation. But I felt your heartbreak through our connection, Isla. Felt you dying without me. So, tell me again. His hand came up, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't love me. Isla's breath shuddered. Tears burned hot trails down her cheeks. It doesn't matter if I love you. They'll kill you. I don't care. I care. The words burst out raw and desperate. I can't watch you die, Cade. I can't stand in front of your pack and watch them execute you with silver, because you chose me. I'd rather live without you than. He kissed her, crushed his mouth to hers with bruising intensity, swallowing her protests, one hand fisting in her hair while the other banded around her waist, and pulled her flesh against him. The mate bond exploded between them. Weeks of separation and pain and longing condensing into a single point of contact that felt like coming home and catching fire simultaneously. Isla's hands came up to push him away, ended up fisting in his wet shirt instead, pulling him closer, kissing him back with everything she'd been holding in. A sob broke from her throat and he swallowed it, deepening the kiss until she couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't remember why she'd ever tried to leave. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, foreheads pressed together, Cade's voice was wrecked. You think I didn't feel your pain every single day? Every hour you were gone, I felt you breaking. Felt your grief and your fear and your love bleeding through the bond. You think I don't know you were dying without me? You were supposed to forget me, Isla whispered. Move on. Find someone. Impossible. His grip tightened. You're my mate. My heart. The other half of my soul. And I'm done hiding. Done letting fear and old laws dictate my life. I'm done pretending I can survive without you. The pack will never accept. Then I'll change the pack. Or burn it to the ground. I don't care anymore, Isla. All I care about is you. They ended up on her bed, not for passion, though the tension still crackled between them, but because Isla's legs wouldn't hold her, and Cade looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. He probably hadn't. Now he sat with his back against her headboard, Isla curled into his side, and laid out everything she'd missed. I've been investigating, Cade said, fingers tracing absent patterns on her shoulder. The attack. The information leak. Who knew your schedule well enough to tell the Tucson pack exactly where you'd be? Isla's breath caught. And
Talia.
His jaw clenched. My head of security. She's been feeding information to Tucson for months. Tracking my movements, reporting on pack vulnerabilities, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The name hit Isla like a fist. Talia, the woman who'd always been cold but professional, who'd been at Cade's side for years, who Isla had assumed was loyal. Why? Power. She wants to be Alpha. Cade's voice went hard. Tucson promised to back her claim if she helped weaken me first. And what better way than using my mate as leverage? Force me into an impossible choice. Renounce you and lose my mind, or fight for you and face execution. But that's not all. He pulled out his phone, scrolling to a file. Talia didn't work alone. She had help from someone in the Pack Council. Someone who's hated me since I became Alpha.
He turned the phone toward Isla.
Audio files. Transcripts. Financial records. Elder Cyrus. One of the senior pack leaders, old guard, traditional values, despised everything Cade represented. He'd been working with Talia, funding her operation, using his council position to push for the execution laws. How did you get this? Isla breathed. Soren's been investigating for weeks. Once I realized there was a traitor, I had him dig through everything: financial records, communication logs, surveillance footage from pack properties. Kate's smile was sharp and dangerous. Turns out Talia got sloppy. And Cyrus is too arrogant to cover his tracks properly. Isla's mind raced. So, you have evidence. Proof they conspired against you. Enough to expose them to the full pack council. Enough to strip them of rank and exile them. His expression darkened. But if I go back alone, they'll move against me before I can present it. Cyrus controls half the elders. He'll demand my immediate arrest, call for execution, and I'll be dead before anyone hears the truth. So, what do we do? Kate turned to face her fully, eyes burning with fierce determination. I need you with me. I need the pack to see what a true mate bond looks like, that it's sacred, chosen by forces older than their laws. That loving you doesn't make me weak. It makes me stronger. Terror and hope warred in Isla's chest. What if they reject it? What if they still demand? Then we fight. His hand found hers, fingers lacing tight. Together. And if we go down together. No more running. No more separation. I'd rather die at your side than live centuries without you. They flew back to Phoenix the next morning. Cade made calls during the flight, terse, commanding conversations that had pack members scrambling. By the time they landed, an emergency assembly had been called at his Scottsdale estate for that evening. Mandatory attendance. Every ranked wolf. Every family leader. 200+ werewolves gathering to witness whatever their alpha was about to do. Isla spent the flight in silence, hand locked in Cade's, terror churning her stomach. She'd never seen his estate, the sprawling mansion in the foothills where pack business was conducted, where wolves gathered under full moons, where justice was dispensed according to ancient codes, where executions happened. When they arrived at sunset, the house was already full. Isla could hear the crowd inside, voices raised in speculation, tension thick enough to choke on. Soren met them at the entrance, expression grim. They're volatile. Cyrus has been spreading rumors that you've lost your mind over a human. Half the pack thinks you're unfit to lead. Good. Cade's voice was ice. Let them doubt. They're about to learn the truth. He looked at Isla, eyes softening fractionally. You don't have to do this. I can still send you somewhere safe.
No.
Isla squeezed his hand. We do this together. You said it yourself, no more running. Something fierce and proud flashed across his face. He kissed her once, hard and claiming, then led her inside. The great hall of Cade's estate was massive, vaulted ceilings, stone walls, a space designed to hold hundreds. And tonight it was packed. Wolves lined the walls, filled the floor space, watched from the second-story balcony. Their eyes tracked Isla with predatory focus, glowing faint amber in the dim lighting. Some were curious. Many were hostile. All of them were dangerous. Cade walked in with Isla at his side. Not behind him, not hidden, but right there next to him for everyone to see. His hand was locked around hers, alpha power rolling off him in waves that made every wolf in the room instinctively lower their heads. Except Elder Cyrus. The old wolf stood in the center of the floor, surrounded by traditionalist council members, his expression carved from stone. You dare bring a human here? Into Pack's sacred space. I dare. Cade's voice rang through the hall. This woman is my mate. The bond chose her. And she has more right to stand in this hall than traitors who conspire against their alpha. Chaos erupted. Wolves shouting over each other. Accusations flying. Someone called for Cade's arrest. Another demanded Isla be removed immediately. Cade let them rage for 30 seconds. Then he released a pulse of alpha dominance so powerful that every wolf in the room dropped to their knees. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. You want to challenge me? Cade's eyes blazed pure gold. Question my fitness to lead? Then hear the truth first. He played the recordings. Talia's voice admitting she'd been working with Tucson. Financial transactions showing payments from Cyrus to outside packs. Surveillance footage of secret meetings. Every piece of evidence laid bare for the pack to witness. Gasps rippled through the crowd.
Shock.
Horror. Betrayal. Elder Cyrus's face went white. This is fabricated. It's verified. Sonoran stepped forward, holding a tablet. Independent analysis. Multiple sources. You and Talia conspired to weaken our alpha using his mate as leverage. You violated every pack law about loyalty and brotherhood. You're the traitors here. The crowd turned on Cyrus instantly. Wolves who'd supported him moments ago now looked at him with disgust. Talia tried to bolt for the exit and was tackled by 2 enforcers before she made it 3 steps. Cade let the pack absorb the revelation. Then, he did something unprecedented. He knelt. Right there in the center of the hall, with 200 wolves watching, Cade Thorne, Billionaire Alpha, most powerful werewolf in the Southwest, dropped to one knee and pulled Isla down beside him. "This woman is my mate," he said, voice carrying to every corner. The bond chose her. The moon blessed her.
She is human, yes.
But she is also brave, loyal, and worth more than any law written by wolves who feared change. He looked around the room, meeting eyes, commanding attention. "I have led this pack for 15 years, built our territory, protected our people. And I'm telling you now, if you cannot accept my mate, if you cling to old laws that say only werewolf blood is worthy, then I renounce my position. Because she is worth more than power, more than legacy, more than all of this." Silence stretched.
Taut.
Unbearable. Then Sonoran stepped forward, knelt beside his alpha. "I stand with Cade. And I stand with his mate." One wolf joined him. Then another. Younger pack members moving first, the ones who'd grown up under Cade's progressive leadership, who believed in adaptation over tradition. Then families. Entire bloodlines kneeling in support. Then elders, not all, but enough. Wolves who'd seen Cade's strength, who respected his leadership, who believed the bond was sacred regardless of species. Within minutes, 3/4 of the pack knelt in solidarity. Elder Cyrus stood alone with his dwindling supporters, face twisted in impotent rage. "This is blasphemy. This is evolution." Cade rose, pulling Isla up with him. "And you're exiled. You and Talia both. Stripped of rank. Banned from pack lands. If you return, you'll be executed as traitors." Enforcers dragged them both out, their protests fading into the night. Cade turned to the assembled pack, Isla's hand still locked in his. "We change the laws. Tonight. Mates are sacred. Human or werewolf. And anyone who threatens my mate threatens me. Are we clear?" A chorus of agreement rose. Howls of support. And Cade looked at Isla with such fierce love that her knees went weak. "Screw the old ways," he said loud Inu. GH for everyone to hear. "Screw the fear.
You're my home now.
And I will burn down anyone who tries to take you from me." Isla Vaughn stood in a room full of werewolves who could tear her apart without breaking a sweat. And for the first time since a strawberry margarita changed her life, she wasn't afraid. Because Cade Thorne, Alpha, mate, the other half of her soul, had just rewritten centuries of law for her. Had knelt before his pack and chosen her over everything. And as the wolves howled their acceptance, as Cade pulled her into his arms and kissed her like they had all the time in the world, Isla finally believed what she'd been too terrified to hope for. That happy endings were possible. Even for a clumsy human photographer and the supernatural mob boss who loved her enough to burn the world down. Even for them. Chapter 7. That night, Cade took Isla back to his penthouse. And everything that had been building between them for months. The tension, the separation, the near-death experiences, the wars they'd fought just to stand in the same room, finally ignited. The drive from Scottsdale to downtown Phoenix was silent. Not the awkward kind of silence, but the charged kind, the air between them practically crackling with electricity. Cade's hand was locked around hers, thumb tracing circles on her palm that sent shivers racing up her arm. Every red light felt like torture. Every mile stretched endless. Through the mate bond, Isla could feel everything he was feeling. Relief so profound it made her chest ache. Love so deep it felt like drowning in the best way. And underneath it all, a hunger that had been denied too long, restrained too much, and was now clawing at the surface, demanding satisfaction. Her own need mirrored his, amplified through their connection until she couldn't tell where her desire ended and his began. When they finally pulled into the private garage beneath his building, Cade killed the engine and sat perfectly still for 3 seconds. Then he turned to her, eyes blazing amber, and said in a voice rough as gravel, "The second we're through my door, I'm not going to be gentle." Isla's breath caught. Heat pooled low in her belly.
I don't want gentle.
Something feral flashed across his face. Good. They lay tangled together as dawn broke over Phoenix. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the bedroom in soft gold light, the city sprawling below them in the hazy glow of early morning. Isla was curled against Cade's side, his arm wrapped around her, fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. She'd never felt so content. So complete. The mate bond hummed between them, no longer painful or frayed, but warm and steady, a constant reassurance that he was there, that this was real, that they'd survived. What happens now? Isla whispered, not wanting to break the peaceful silence, but needing to know. Cade shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look at her. His hair was messed from sleep and other activities. His eyes were back to their human hazel, warm and soft in a way she rarely saw. He looked younger like this. Less alpha, more just
Cade.
Now we rebuild, he said, voice still rough from sleep. The pack. The laws. Everything that's been broken or outdated or cruel. We change it. His fingers traced her jawline. I'm calling a formal council meeting next week. Proposing new legislation about mates, that species doesn't matter, that the bond itself is what's sacred. It'll take time, but we'll make it stick. And the pack members who disagree? They can challenge me for alpha. Or they can accept change. Either way, you're not going anywhere. His hand slid to the back of her neck, pulling her closer. You never leave my side again. Isla raised an eyebrow. Possessive much? You're the mate of a werewolf alpha. A slow smile curved his lips, dangerous and affectionate, and absolutely unrepentant. You signed up for this. She laughed, the sound bright and free, nothing like the broken, hollow thing it had been in Seattle. I guess I did. He kissed her forehead, her temple, the corner of her mouth. Soft, claiming touches that made the bond flare warm in her chest. I love you. And I'm going to spend the rest of my very long life proving you made the right choice. Very long life. Isla pulled back slightly. How long do alphas live, exactly? Few centuries, give or take. His expression turned serious. I should have mentioned that. The mate bond. It'll extend your life too. Slow your aging. You won't be fully immortal, but you'll have time. Decades. Maybe a century or more. Isla's mind reeled. A century. With him. With this impossible, wonderful, infuriating man who'd rewritten his entire world for her. I can live with that, she whispered. Cade's smile was radiant. Good. Because I have plans for us. Big plans. The next 3 weeks were the happiest of Isla's life. She moved into Cade's penthouse officially, not that she'd spent a night away from it since the assembly. Her thrift store furniture looked ridiculous next to his expensive minimalist pieces, but he refused to let her get rid of anything. It's you, he'd said simply. I want you everywhere. So her vintage cameras ended up on his sleek shelves. Her string lights were draped across his bedroom. Her chaotic collection of books invaded his organized office. And slowly, the space stopped being his and became theirs. The pack adjusted. Some enthusiastically. Younger wolves who saw Isla as proof their alpha was progressive, forward-thinking. Others reluctantly, but they adjusted nonetheless because Cade's leadership was undeniable and his claim on Isla absolute. Sonoran became an unexpected ally. He'd show up at the penthouse with coffee and updates on pack business, treating Isla with a respect that bordered on protective. "You saved his life," he'd told her once, voice gruff. "By leaving. By coming back. Most people don't have that kind of courage." Zara screamed for 20 minutes straight when Isla finally called to explain everything. Then demanded to meet Cade, interrogated him for an hour about his intentions, and declared him acceptable, but I'm watching you. Isla started working again, photography for local publications, building her portfolio, chasing the career she'd put on hold. Cade supported it completely, even assigned pack security to shadow her on shoots in sketchy areas. Overprotective, maybe. But Isla didn't mind. It felt like love in action. Life settled into a rhythm. Morning coffee while watching sunrise over the city. Cade teaching her about pack dynamics and werewolf culture. Isla teaching him how to cook something other than steak. Late nights tangled together, the mate bond singing between them, both of them marveling that they'd survived everything thrown at them. It felt like a happy ending. It felt perfect. And then, 3 weeks after the assembly, Isla woke up dizzy. It started small. Little things she dismissed as stress or adjustment or just the weirdness of living with a supernatural creature. Her senses sharpened. She could hear conversations from 3 rooms away. Could smell coffee brewing 2 floors down in a neighbor's apartment. Could see details in the dark that should have been invisible. She healed faster. A paper cut that should have lasted days disappeared in hours. A bruise from bumping into furniture faded overnight. And her emotions felt bigger, more intense. Especially around the full moon, which was approaching. She'd catch herself growling when frustrated. Actually growling, the sound rumbling from her chest in a way that didn't feel human. Isla ignored it, attributed it to the mate bond, to being constantly surrounded by werewolves whose energy was rubbing off on her. Until the morning she looked in the bathroom mirror, and her eyes flashed amber. Not reflecting light. Not a trick. Her eyes, her human brown eyes, glowed molten gold for 3 full seconds before fading back. Isla stumbled backward, heart racing, and that's when her hands shifted. Claws. Actual claws extending from her fingertips, sharp and black and utterly impossible. She screamed. Cade crashed through the bathroom door within seconds, eyes wild, scanning for threats. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Isla held up her hands. The claws were retracting, sinking back under her skin. But they'd been there. Undeniably there.
"Cade."
Her voice shook. "What's happening to me?" He went very still. Stared at her hands. Then her eyes. His expression cycled through shock, disbelief, and something that looked dangerously like hope. "We need to see the pack healer," he said quietly. "Right now." The healer, an ancient wolf named Vera who'd been with the pack for over a century, examined Isla for 20 minutes in complete silence, testing her reflexes, checking her eyes, listening to her heartbeat, taking blood samples that she studied under equipment Isla didn't understand. Finally, Vera looked up, expression somewhere between amazed and delighted. "You're not entirely human," she said simply. Isla's world tilted. "What?" "You have dormant werewolf DNA. Distant ancestry, probably several generations back. It's been sleeping your entire life." Vera's smile was gentle, until the mate bond with an alpha activated it. Cade made a choked sound. "She's becoming a shifter?" "Already started. The enhanced senses, the healing, the partial shifts, those are early signs. Give it another few weeks, maybe through the next full moon, and she'll be able to fully transform." Isla couldn't breathe, couldn't process. "But I'm human. I've always been human." "You've always had the potential," Vera corrected. The bond simply awakened what was already there. It's rare, but not unheard of. The moon works in mysterious ways. She looked between them, eyes twinkling. "Perhaps the bond knew what you'd become. Perhaps that's why it chose you." Isla looked at Cade. He was staring at her with such fierce joy that tears burned her eyes. "You're going to be a wolf," he breathed. "You're going to be pack. Fully." No more questions about species or bloodlines or... His voice broke. You're going to live centuries with me. Run under the moon with me. Be my mate in every possible way. And despite the shock, despite the impossibility of it all, Isla felt herself smiling. I guess I'm not so clumsy after all, she whispered. I spilled a drink and changed my entire species. Cade laughed, bright and incredulous, and so full of love it hurt. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was precious and unbreakable and exactly what he'd been searching for across lifetimes. And Isla held him back, feeling the bond sing between them, feeling her body changing into something new, and knew with absolute certainty. This wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning. Chapter 8.
So,
Funny story. Turns out Isla Vaughn wasn't entirely human after all. And she discovered this in the most dramatic way possible. Standing in Cade's bathroom at 6 in the morning, staring at her reflection while her eyes glowed amber and claws extended from her fingertips like something out of a nightmare. Or a dream. She still wasn't sure which. The weeks following that bathroom revelation were a blur of tests and discoveries and moments where Isla questioned her entire existence. Vera, the pack healer who delivered the impossible news, monitored her progress obsessively. Blood work every 3 days. Reflex tests. Sensory evaluations. Tracking every change as Isla's dormant werewolf DNA woke up and rewrote her biology from the inside out. The transformations were subtle at first. Her hearing sharpened until she could track conversations happening 3 apartments away, which was overwhelming and occasionally horrifying when neighbors got loud at inappropriate hours. Her sense of smell became ridiculous. She could identify people by scent alone, track Cade through the penthouse with her eyes closed, and knew what he'd eaten for lunch before he walked through the door. Her strength increased gradually. She'd grab a coffee mug too hard and shatter the handle. Open a door and accidentally rip it off the hinges. Cade found it hilarious. Isla found it mortifying. This is what puppies go through, he'd explained, barely containing his grin while she stared at yet another broken door handle. Learning to control new strength. You're essentially a baby wolf in an adult body. That's not helping. It's adorable. She'd thrown a pillow at him. He'd caught it one-handed without looking, which only proved his point. But the hardest part was the pull. As the full moon approached, Isla felt something primal awakening inside her. A restlessness that made her skin itch. An urge to run, to hunt, to let something wild and untamed take over. Her wolf, because apparently she had one now, was clawing at the surface, demanding freedom. It terrified her. Cade took her to the desert for her first full shift. Miles from the city, under stars so thick they looked painted on, with nothing but sand and scrub brush and the ancient mountains watching in silence. The full moon hung huge and silver overhead, pulling at something deep in Isla's bones. You don't have to force it, Cade said, standing close enough to touch but giving her space. The moon will guide you. Your wolf knows what to do. My wolf is freaking out. Isla's hands were shaking. What if I can't shift back? What if I get stuck? You won't. His voice was absolute certainty. I'll be right here. And if something goes wrong, which it won't, I'll guide you through it. He shifted first, showing her how it was done. The transformation was breathtaking and disturbing in equal measure. Bones cracking and reforming. His body rippling as fur erupted across skin. Within seconds, Cade the man disappeared and a massive black wolf stood in his place. Easily 400 pounds of muscle and fang, eyes still that burning amber, watching her with intelligence that was entirely him. Beautiful.
terrifying. Hers.
Isla took a shaking breath, closed her eyes, and let go. The shift was agony and ecstasy simultaneously. Every bone in her body breaking and reforming. Her senses exploding into hyperdrive. Suddenly, she could smell everything, hear the heartbeat of a rabbit 200 yards away, feel the vibrations of the earth through paws that had been feet seconds ago. When it was done, Isla opened eyes that saw the world in sharper detail, scented the air with a nose that understood 1,000 stories written in wind and sand. She'd done it. She was a wolf. Smaller than Cade, sleeker, built for speed rather than dominance. Her fur was russet brown with gold highlights that caught moonlight. And she felt powerful, strong, connected to something ancient and wild that had been sleeping inside her entire life. Cade shifted back, kneeling naked in the sand, and his expression was pure awe. "You're beautiful." Isla tried to shift back, managed it on the third attempt, stumbling, shaking, collapsing into Cade's arms as the transformation reversed and left her gasping. She couldn't find words. That was incredible. He held her tight, laughing into her hair. "Welcome to the pack, little wolf." Officially. 6 months later, they stood before the pack in a formal mating ceremony. The great hall was transformed, candles everywhere, traditional wolf symbols painted on the walls in silver and black, the air thick with incense that smelled of cedar and sage. 200 wolves filled the space, but this time their eyes held acceptance.
Pride. Joy.
Isla wore a dress Cade had commissioned. Silver silk that moved like water, fitted to her body in ways that made his eyes flash amber every time he looked at her. Her hair was loose, falling in dark waves down her back. And her eyes occasionally flashed that supernatural amber when emotions overwhelmed her, which happened approximately every 30 seconds. Because this was real. This was happening. She was about to be formally recognized as alpha mate in front of the entire pack. Cade stood across from her, devastating in traditional ceremonial clothing, black and silver, ancient symbols embroidered across his chest, looking every inch the powerful alpha he was. But his eyes were soft when they found hers, vulnerable in a way he only ever was with her. Vera stood between them, conducting the ceremony in the old language, words that predated modern werewolf packs, that called on moon and earth and ancient powers to witness and bless this union. The pack chanted responses. Their voices rose in harmonies that made Isla's wolf stir with recognition, with belonging. And then Vera stepped back, and it was just the two of them. Cade took Isla's hands. His grip was warm, steady, grounding her when she felt like she might float away from the intensity of the moment. "You are my moon," he said, voice low and fierce, and carrying to every corner of the hall. "My mate, my forever, the other half of my soul, across every lifetime. I will protect you, honor you, love you through every storm and every joy. And I will never, never take for granted the miracle of you choosing me." Tears burned hot trails down Isla's cheeks. She squeezed his hands, finding her voice even though it shook. "You are my home," she whispered. "My safe place in a world I didn't understand until you showed me. You taught me I was stronger than I knew, braver than I believed. And you loved me when I was just human, just clumsy, just me." She smiled through the tears. "Even when I'm a baby wolf who trips over her own paws?" The pack laughed, warm and affectionate. Cade's grin was radiant. Especially then. He pulled her close and kissed her, not tentatively or carefully, but deeply, claiming a kiss that promised forever and meant it. The mate bond flared between them, golden and perfect and complete, and the pack erupted in howls of celebration. Thunder rolled in the distance despite the clear sky, because fate apparently appreciated dramatic timing. Later, after the ceremony dissolved into celebration, pack members congratulating them, younger wolves asking Isla about her transformation, elders offering blessings in the old language, Cade pulled her onto the balcony overlooking Phoenix. The city sprawled below in glittering lights. The desert stretched beyond in darkness that held secrets and wildness and freedom. And above, the moon hung huge and bright, watching over them like it had been waiting for this moment since the beginning. "What are you thinking?" Cade asked, arms wrapped around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. Isla leaned back into his warmth. "That I spilled a drink on you at a music festival 6 months ago. And now I'm a werewolf. Married to an alpha. Living a life I couldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams. Technically, we're mated, not married. Though we can do the legal ceremony too if you want. Overachiever. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. Are you happy? His expression went soft. Tender. I didn't know what happy was before you. I knew powerful, successful, respected, but happy. He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. You taught me that. And every single day with you is happier than the last. Even when I accidentally shifted during your business meeting last week and terrified your investors? Especially then. He kissed her forehead. You make my life chaotic and unpredictable and so full of joy I don't know how I survived centuries without you. Isla's throat tightened.
We
have centuries now. Together. We do. His smile was fierce. Possessive. Absolutely devoted. And I plan to spend every single one worshipping you. That's a long time. Not long enough. They stood there wrapped around each other, watching the city breathe below them, feeling the bond hum between them like music, both marveling at the impossible journey that had brought them here. From a spilled drink to a mate bond. From enemies to lovers. From human to wolf. From broken to whole.
So yeah.
Isla accidentally spilled her drink on a billionaire Werewolf Alpha during a music festival in Phoenix. And now, she's his mate, a baby shifter learning to control her claws, teaching photography workshops for pack youth, and the happiest she's ever been in her entire weird, chaotic, absolutely perfect life. Life's weird. Love's weirder. And if a grumpy supernatural CEO obsessed with you sounds appealing, well, Isla's living proof it can work. Even if it starts with tequila and terrible coordination. Isla leans forward, eyes intense, voice urgent. Listen, if you made it to the end of this hour-long emotional roller coaster and you still haven't subscribed to Gracie Werewolf Story Bank, she genuinely needs to know. What will it take? A personal invitation from Cade Thorne himself? The algorithm will bury this channel. And you'll spend the next month frantically searching Phoenix, Werewolf Spilled Drink Story, trying to find it again, cursing yourself for not hitting that subscribe button when you had the chance. Don't be that person. Don't let algorithm demons steal this from you.
Subscribe.
Right now. And drop a comment telling Isla what country you're watching from. She needs to see how far this pack reaches. How many of you are out there, hearts pounding, feeling every emotion, ready for more supernatural chaos? Comment, mate, if this story grabbed you by the throat and refused to let go. Comment your country. And for the love of the moon, hit that subscribe button before you forget. Isla's smiling, exhausted, glowing, radiating happiness. Thank you for riding this absolute chaos with me. Thank you for feeling every twist, every heartbreak, every triumphant moment. If this story made you feel anything, and Isla knows it did because you're still here, smash that like button until your finger hurts. Subscribe to Gracie Werewolf Story Bank for more werewolf romance madness that'll keep you up way past your bedtime. Check out the playlist for stories just as addictive as this one: Forbidden Bonds, Alpha Obsession, Supernatural Worlds Hiding in Plain Sight. And remember, the best love stories start with tequila and bad decisions. The best adventures begin with one clumsy moment that changes everything. Until next time, pack. Stay wild. Stay curious. And maybe watch where you're walking at music festivals. You never know which spilled drink might rewrite your entire destiny.
Peace.